Good morning, folks. Everything new under the sun. All right, we're working with our blue ice microphone this morning, so I'm hoping the audio is a lot better. If you watched the live stream yesterday, I was doing some tests on it. It seems to be much clearer and pick up less ambient noise than the laptop microphone, so that's great. I hope the volume will be better and more clear for everybody. The news of the day is peace and the peace plan. And so I thought today, there is a new article. This is from Debka file. But I want to roll back a second and just, again, look at the verses and look at what it means about the peace plan, the Antichrist, the abomination of desolation, the ceasing of the sacrifices, the third temple, kind of all the detail around that. I'm not going to get into everything. But what I want to do is, again, look at the verses here so that we can kind of reset. Look at the verses as to why we're reading these news articles and understand how this points us to the last days. So this is BibleGateway.com, and this is the standard passage, Daniel 9:27. This is from the KJV. It says, "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week." That's where we get the 7-year tribulation. "And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate." So the Antichrist is going to confirm a covenant. He's not going to come up with it. He's not going to create it. He's just going to confirm it. So there's something existing there that he says, yes, we're going to push forward with this one, and he will confirm it. And he's going to confirm it for a period of 1 week. Will there be any discussion of a timeline in this peace deal, in Trump's peace plan? That's going to be very interesting to see. We have no details related to that yet. But in the midst of the week, in the midst of the 7-year period that he set forth originally, he's going to cause the sacrifice to cease, and the oblation. So what's that all about? Well, the Jews sacrificed in their temple, of course, and they haven't sacrificed again because they're waiting for the third temple. They're waiting for a temple to be built so they can sacrifice again and initiate those sacrifices. So possibly part of the peace deal is some agreement to allow the Jews to have a temple in Jerusalem. And if they had a temple, then they could start sacrificing again. And that's interesting. So this is from endtime.com, and this is an article this is Irvin Baxter's ministry. And he has this article here, "Confirmation of the Covenant, How Will We Recognize It?" And I just want to read you a short section here. "Stopping the sacrifices. The Jewish people have not offered sacrifices since the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD. So this gives you some background as to when these sacrifices ceased. They believe they must have a temple in order to sacrifice. Revelation 11:1-2 teaches that a temple will stand on the Temple Mount at least 42 months before Armageddon. Once the third temple is completed, sacrifices will be resumed. This will trigger worldwide opposition to this daily slaughter of animals." So all the PETA folk, all the people who are against animal slaughter will come out and start protesting against it. "Consequently, the Antichrist will stop sacrifices after 3.5 years and commit the abomination of desolation," which is the sitting on the throne, setting himself up as God. So that's what we're looking at, and that's kind of a background of the Daniel 9:27 detail. You know, many people may wonder, well, why are they sacrificing? Why aren't they sacrificing now? Can't they go ahead with that? And why does the verse talk about stopping the sacrifices when they hadn't started yet? When the passage hadn't mentioned that they started yet? Well, the implication is that the Antichrist, who puts in place this peace deal, will somehow allow the Jews to start sacrificing again to a point where he can then stop it in the middle of the tribulation. So now we get to this. This is a JPost article. Let's go back to the Debka file one briefly. Kushner says U.S. peace plan very detailed, draws border, but no publication date. So what does this say? And a bit of this is repeated in the other article, but I want to look at both of them because they provide interesting information. Debkaval, although Kushner says the U.S. peace plan deals with all core issues of the conflict, he offered no timeline for its presentation. In an interview with Sky News in Arabic on Monday, Kushner, Donald Trump's advisor, said he and the Middle East envoy Jason Greenblatt had formulated practical and just solutions to the issue that will be relevant for 2019. So that's an interesting statement. Why relevant for 2019? Are they really looking to push this ahead? They hope so. The U.S. peace plan is very detailed and focuses on drawing borders and resolving key issues. Kushner says the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been used for years to incite extremism. For years, resistance to the nation of Israel has united the region, but now it is changing. We see that Iran is the greatest threat in the region, and we have news coming out of Iran that Zarif, the foreign minister of Iran, has stepped down, and so the question is, does that lead to the failure of the missile deal, the nuclear deal that was made with the U.S., or does that mean they're going to go ahead with the nuclear deal? And that's a question out there. And so a key top person in Iran, Zarif, the foreign minister, stepped down, and so they're wondering what that has to do with now. So that's an interesting side subject in and of itself. Debkaval notes Kushner did not say clearly that the plan on which he and Greenblatt have been working for nearly 2 years is finished or ready for presentation. According to sources, some elements are still in progress. So let's go ahead and over to this other article here. This is from jpost.com. Kushner speaks about peace plan, fuels election battles on the right. Of course, Iran is the greatest threat. And in the meantime, they're also coming out with this, trying to push ahead this peace plan, which is apparently going to be rolled out directly after the elections. The long-awaited U.S. peace plan, expected to be rolled out soon after April 9 elections, will seek to resolve border issues, it says. And again, he's quoted as speaking with Sky News Arabia. Very detailed. The borders are drawn. The division of Jerusalem is a key piece of that. Kushner said in the interview that the team focused on 4 principles. The first is freedom, where we want people to enjoy the right of opportunity, religion, and worship. Look at this one. The first is freedom. They want people to enjoy the opportunity of rights of opportunity, religion and worship, regardless of beliefs. Now, you look at that, worship. Does that mean it includes an opportunity for the Jewish people to worship and to set up a third temple? You gotta look at that and say, is that what they're going to write into it? They know the Jewish people want a third temple. They know they want to be able to go up on the Temple Mount and worship. And they can't right now. They can't do it freely. And so is it written into this peace plan a deal for the Jewish people to go ahead and worship on the Temple Mount? That's very interesting. The dignity of people should be safeguarded. They should respect each other and benefit from opportunities to improve their lives without allowing conflicts to jeopardize their children's future and security. What do the Palestinians want? Palestinians want non-corrupt government that cares for their own interests, he asserted. And is talking about him learning from previous rounds of negotiations, etc. There's also a economic component to this plan, so there's going to be money involved. It says, and the economic impact will not be limited to Israelis and Palestinians, but will encompass the entire region. So they're really, in a way, I read this as kind of bribing all the nations and attempting to get everybody on board, and they will get everybody on board, and everybody will say peace and security, and the whole world will be excited for this peace deal, but then it will quickly be broken at the midpoint of the 7-year tribulation. And so they're then discussing how this is playing into the current elections, how both sides are using it back and forth. to their advantage or whatever, or to put down the other side. So interesting situation with the election, how they're all using it, and battles on the right in Israel. But I think there's key pieces of information. They're going to release it right after the elections, apparently, according to this, and that lines are drawn, including the division of Israel, and that they want free worship of all people, which speaks to me the dividing of Israel and some agreement to give Israel a third temple. And ultimately, that's what it's leading to, because the Bible says in 9:27 that the Antichrist will confirm a covenant with many. In the midst of the week, he shall cause a sacrifice and oblation to cease, which means if there's sacrifices, that means there is a third temple, and that the Jews are able to sacrifice in that third temple, because they will not sacrifice officially without it. So interesting news. Again, Debka file, jpost.com. We're living in the last days. It looks like nothing big is going to happen until after the elections, but we can see the run-up. We can see details of the peace plan coming out slowly but surely. Let's see. I did want to cover one other article here. 1 second. So the other article I did want to look at is this plague, this infestation of locusts. This is breakingisraelnews.com, and I think it's interesting. I don't think this is a particular end-time plague at this point, but I think it acts at very minimum as a great reminder of the biblical plagues that came upon the area in Bible times. And I believe we're living in Bible times again, and this is why these things are happening. Now, there is a cyclical nature to these sorts of events. But now we can see, when we have these locust plagues, we can see that the stories, the history in the Bible is accurate, because these things are happening today and we can see them. And God will use these to fulfill his purpose. Middle East braces for locust plague return. This is from February 29th, breakingisraelnews.com. In Exodus, it says, "They covered the face of the whole land, so that the land was darkened," the locusts did, "and they ate all the plants in the land, and all the fruit of the trees that the hail had left. Not a green thing remained, neither tree nor plant of the field, though through all the land of Egypt." So this was the result of the locust plague. And so I will put it out there. The Bible speaks of pestilence and famine. Does the pestilence come by way of locust, and the famine come by way of the locust eating all the fruits and the plants? That is the obvious, direct correlation to events that have occurred in the past, in Bible times, in the Old Testament, and so forth. And so if you're looking for an economic collapse to cause a famine, well, that could very well be how it plays out. But the more direct location and linkage would be, specifically related to the plagues of locusts, in this case, the bloom of locusts. And it easily and very quickly causes a famine. And it's going to be trouble for Egypt. After a wave of strange phenomena, Egypt and Saudi Arabia are currently struggling to cope with swarms of locusts, and the plague promises to only get worse. What caused this? Well, unusually heavy rains this month are leading to a second generation born of a wave of locusts that appear in the Sudan and Eritrea in December. So the environment, really triggers the waves and the generations of these locusts. Once vegetation begins to dry out, adult groups and a few swarms are likely to move north along the Red Sea coast in Eritrea to Sudan, and from the Red Sea coast of Sudan to the Nile Valley in northern Sudan, said the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization. The agency monitors these particular outbreaks. Desert locusts are always present in the region, but are typically solitary. Favorable breeding conditions generate swarms, and their behavior changes as they form groups that can be miles long and contain 1 billion individuals. Swarms are often tens of square kilometers in size, and they're warning that a swarm could just be 1 kilometer. A swarm of just 1 kilometer, 1 square kilometer, eats the same amount of food in one day as 35,000 people. So when you're talking about biblical plagues, pestilences, and famines, you can easily see that a swarm of locusts will cause this. They have caused it in the past. They will cause it in the future. They're causing it, in fact, right now. And they consume what half the population of the entire of either country would eat in a single day. Speaking of Mali or Niger there. The swarm can also travel 93 miles a day, making efforts to control an outbreak even more difficult. Officials warn further rains in the region could lead to an even larger outbreak. So when you're talking about swarms of biblical proportions, I think you can easily see that what happened in the past. You look at the locust plagues in the past and you say, well, that's supernatural. That could never happen. And indeed, we see it happening today, just as it did in spoken of in the book of Exodus, where the whole land was covered, the sky was darkened simply by the number of these, and famine was caused by pestilence, and that pestilence by way of locust swarms as just one example. It says, it may seem unlikely that a string of 10 plagues might suddenly appear under the watchful eye of scientists, but that precisely seems to be what is happening. 5 of the plagues reappeared around the globe in the last few months of 2018. Just last week, Breaking Israel News reported on a growing epidemic of chronic wasting disease infections in deer in the U.S. The disease producing zombie-like symptoms confirms the biblical description of the 5th plague. Then the hand of Hashem will strike your livestock in the fields, the horses, the asses, the camels, the cattle, and the sheep with a very severe pestilence. That's from Exodus 9:3. So I'll put all these links to these articles in the description. You can check them out. But we're living in biblical days. I mean, these plagues are upon us. Whether they're supernatural or not, these are occurring. These are warning us that birth pains are growing in frequency and intensity, and also reminds us that the biblical plagues are absolutely possible and are upon us in these last days, and they're going to get even worse. And the Lord, I think, is using these to remind us, you know what, saying the Bible is true. Bible is accurate. Historically, it's accurate. And it's going to happen again in the last days. And that's exactly what the prophetic scriptures speak of in the last days. All these things. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll leave it there. And I will see you guys in the next video.